Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Meru Health Graduates webinar, Making Conscious Decisions and Uncovering Your Hidden Drivers. So in this webinar, you're going to have the opportunity to explore and discover your hidden drivers, reflect on their impact and what you want to change. And you'll also learn techniques that are based in neuroscience to change where you have influence. We had a live version of this webinar last week on March 15th, and we're sharing this recording for those of you who couldn't attend that live recording. If you're new to Meru Health, we're a digital mental health platform and program that uses continuous care model led by dedicated therapists and coaches, plus breakthrough digital tools and activities. And we've been clinically proven to deliver industry-leading outcomes. I'd also like to introduce myself. My name is Bela Shah. I'm a certified coach, and I'm also the Associate Director of the Preventative Coaching Program here at Meru Health. Just some quick housekeeping. I want to remind you that this is for educational purposes only, and it's not a substitute for professional help. And always consider seeking the advice of your physician before starting any new treatment. So this is the agenda and what we're going to cover in today's webinar. You're going to learn what your hidden drivers are, how they're influencing your life. You'll have an opportunity to experiment and reflect with how you can change certain outcomes through conscious awareness. And you're going to learn techniques to influence these outcomes in your life. So what you'll need for this webinar is journal and paper, or any blank paper that you have, as well as a writing utensil. So if you don't have that, just take a couple of seconds to find that, because that's an important part of this webinar. Without paper and pencil or pen, it'll be hard for you to actively participate and benefit from the webinar. And along with that, we invite your curiosity, and your presence. So what are your hidden drivers? What do I mean by that? Well, similar to this diagram you see here, when you go beneath the surface, you're using self-awareness, and you get to know invisible drivers and understand how they influence and shape your behaviors. And invisible drivers include your beliefs, your values, your emotions, your perceptions, and also your unconscious biases. And hidden drivers also include sensations in our body that tell us what we're feeling. So we can use all of this knowledge to better manage our reactions and our behavior, how we show up in the world. And it's our behaviors that help us to connect with other people, inspire others, and influence other people in our lives, personally and professionally. Without awareness of what drives us, and without awareness of these invisible drivers, there can be many consequences, and I'll talk about 3 of them right now. The first is that we lose the opportunity to deepen our connection with other people. How can that impact your life personally, professionally? Another consequence is that we act emotionally to external challenges and stimuli, stressors, rather than thoughtfully responding. It's almost as if we're on autopilot. And then by reacting to unconscious biases, which is an invisible driver, we can unintentionally cause people to feel disengaged, undervalued, and unseen. So awareness of our hidden drivers is what helps us answer an important question. Is what I'm about to do next keeping with my sense of purpose, keeping with my values, keeping with beliefs and perceptions that I've examined? So we're going to explore these hidden drivers in the next few slides, beginning with perception. But before we do that, let's ground ourselves in a mindfulness practice. And this mindfulness practice uses visualization, awareness, and introspection to reveal information about yourself that is impacting different aspects of your life. So, how aware are you of your hidden drivers? Let's see. I invite you to sit back and relax with a straight back and have both of your feet planted, connecting to the floor beneath you. You can close your eyes for this guided practice or have a soft downward gaze. And take in a full deep breath into your belly. Inhaling deeply. And when you're ready, exhale slowly and release. Let's take a few moments right now to arrive and settle in to the space. Allow yourself to gently let go of whatever you're doing before this webinar, or whatever's awaiting you. And give yourself the permission to be here. And now, with your eyes closed or a soft downward gaze, I want you to begin imagining that you're stepping outside of yourself. You're stepping outside of yourself and you're observing yourself right now in this webinar. Who do you see as you observe yourself? And let's rewind to the beginning of this year. Take yourself back to the first week of January. And for a few moments, observe yourself moving from week to week, from month to month, till you arrive here in whatever week or month it is. And quietly, without any judgment, observe yourself going about your life as you move through these weeks and months, engaging in your relationships, working towards your goals, moving through the ups and downs that have presented themselves in your life. And bring to mind any important conversations or projects that you've had or that you're having right now. Bring to mind any intended goals that you had at the beginning of this year, or any desired outcomes. How are you showing up? How are you feeling at the end of each week? What do you wish was different? Notice any thoughts coming up as you continue to observe yourself. Notice if they're critical or worried, or if they're judgmental, or perhaps they're curious or surprised. Whatever the thoughts, just let them go. Imagine they're just like clouds floating through your mind. And slowly you're back here now in this present moment, observing yourself in this webinar. And I'm going to invite you to explore this human being from within. Who are you? Similar to how you stepped outside of yourself, I invite you to step back into yourself, re-inhabiting your body space and exploring yourself from within. Just notice how you're feeling right now in this moment. Notice any emotions that are arising. Notice any sensations that you might be experiencing in your body. You might imagine diving deeper and deeper beneath the surface of an ocean, discovering and remembering what's there. So, what are the values and the intentions that are driving your actions and your decisions? How are your beliefs about yourself influencing how you feel? How are your perceptions about other people influencing your choices, how you relate? For the next few moments, just continue to explore yourself from within, holding these questions about your values, your beliefs, your perceptions. What are you discovering or remembering about yourself? Are you showing up the way you really want to? If not, what's influencing how you show up in the world? What do you want to change or explore more deeply? Take in another full, deep inhale into your belly now. And when you're ready, exhale and release slowly. And if your eyes were closed, you can open them and come back. So, how was that for you? I invite you to reflect on your experience. You can and I want you to make a mental note, or you can even write it down on your paper. Make a mental note of +1 if any of the following resonates with you. I'm going to read some statements and just make a mental note if any of them resonate with you. I'm more curious to explore my values. I notice that some of my actions are not aligned with my values. I notice that I have some self-limiting beliefs that aren't helpful to me, and they impact how I feel about myself. I noticed that my perceptions might not be true, or perhaps they are worthy of further exploration. I discovered something new about myself through self-observation. I realize that there is a lot more that I can learn about myself or discover about myself. So, perception. Let's begin with perception as one of our invisible drivers. Perception is a mental impression. It's formed by how we understand or interpret something. And our perceptions are always subjective, and they are influenced by our prior experiences. In fact, did you know that our brains draw on our past experiences to form our perceptions and prepare our reaction before we're even aware of it? So this means that we are reacting to a present moment experience based on past events, not based on what's actually happening in the present moment from an objective point of view. So this explains why two people can interpret and perceive the same event differently. For example, have you ever noticed being emotionally triggered by something or someone, while another person who experiences the same thing isn't triggered at all? This happens to me all the time with a family member. They can do or say something that completely sets me off, but if they say the same thing to my partner, he's not bothered at all. And this is because my perception of the event is based on all of my accumulated past experiences with this family member. The story that's playing in my head is based on the past. And this story influences how I perceive what they are saying and doing in this present moment. So I'm going to ask you something, and this is where you'll need your pen and paper. Can you think of someone or something that tends to emotionally trigger you? Recall a recent interaction with this person or this situation. And now on your paper, I want you to write about the following. What was your interpretation of this event or this situation when it happened? How did you feel when you remember this experience? Notice if you felt expansive within yourself or contracted within yourself. So, how did you feel? And did you feel expansive or contracted? And how did you react to this event or this situation or this person? And now, for the sake of experiment, try to imagine being a third party witness to this event. For example, imagine being your partner or a friend and place yourself back in the same situation. And on your paper, write about so as you're imagining being back in this situation from a perspective of a friend or someone else that you know, what are some different ways that they might perceive and interpret what happened? Write about that. Can you see that different perceptual stances are possible? And now I want you to try to adopt and embody the perceptual stance that your friend or your partner, this other person, might have on this situation. Imagine stepping into their shoes and adopting their perception of the situation. What changes in how you feel when you adopt a different perceptual stance? In the live webinar, we did this through Slido, and I thought it might be helpful for you to see what some people shared in response. What changes in how you feel when you adopt a different perceptual stance? Here's what some people shared. I feel less defensive. I agree more with my partner's expressed perspective. The urgency to respond or react decreases. I'm more objective. I'm more positive. I feel detached. I'm more compassionate. So these are this is what some people shared. So I want you to take about 30 seconds now. When you think about your response to the question, what changes in how you feel when you adopt different perceptual stance, take about 30 seconds and truly absorb this feeling. You can imagine you're like a sponge, soaking it into every cell of your body. And notice the sensations throughout your body with this new feeling. Notice if there's more expansion and less contraction within you. Notice if there is an easing of tightness or tension, or something feels lighter within you. And now place yourself back in the original situation with this new feeling and these different sensations. What would change in your response based on how you feel right now? Take a moment to write about that. The question again is, what would change in your response in this situation based on how you feel right now? So there is something known as the Pygmalion Effect. It's a studied phenomenon by which others perform according to our preconceived notions and expectations of that person or of those people, mainly because we're giving off signals overtly or inadvertently. We're giving off signals of how we feel. So this Pygmalion effect is enabled by our brain's mirror neurons. Based off of these mirror neurons in our brain, we are able to literally feel what another person feels. This is why emotions are contagious. So going back to your prior experience, what could change in the other person's behavior based on your new perceptual stance? Take a moment to think about how would the other person change in their reaction, in their response to you, based off of the way that you respond differently. So what I want you to write down is, what is a different way that this person might respond to you when they sense into the emotions that you're bringing into the space? What is a different way that this person might respond to you when they sense into the emotions that you're bringing into the space? Let's go a little further and explore some of our beliefs and how these can influence important outcomes in our lives and possibly in the world that we're inherently connected with. Have you noticed that once you've formed a belief, there is a tendency to build evidence for that belief, especially if it's a negative belief? And sometimes this happens consciously, but most of the time we're not aware when we take an event and add it to the internal list of evidence that reinforces existing negative beliefs or stories that we have about ourselves or others. And this is not because we're out to make ourselves fail. It's because we are wired for safety, so we hold on to negative experiences to protect ourselves. This tendency is also known as confirmation bias, where we look for evidence to support our existing beliefs, often causing us to become blind to all data except the data we expect to see. So these stories can create obstacles to our own and other people's success. So going a bit further, self-limiting beliefs form over a period of time when we unconsciously build evidence for self-critical thoughts. Another way to think about it is to imagine that a self-critical thought is a line in the sand formed by a negative experience. If we don't ruminate on the experience, or if we choose to view the experience from an objective lens, the line will soon disappear. However, if we ruminate and block out anything that could be neutral or positive, the negative experience ends up on our list of evidence of why we're not good enough. And over time, the self-critical thought becomes a self-limiting belief. The line in the sand transforms into an engraving etched in stone. So as a result, self-limiting beliefs become mental habits. They lead us down behavioral pathways that keep us from realizing our potential in work and in life. So bring out that pen and paper again. And I want you to recall a time when things didn't go well or live up to your expectations. Take a moment to bring something to mind when things didn't go well or live up to your expectations. It could be a small thing or maybe something more significant. What was the story playing in your mind when things didn't go as you would have liked? What was the story playing in your mind? Write about that. And were there any self-critical thoughts that were part of that story? And now notice if these self-critical thoughts have stayed with you. On a scale of 1 to 5, when something doesn't turn out as you hoped, how often does a self-critical thought reappear in your mind? Make a mental note. On a scale of 1 to 5, how often does a self-critical thought reappear in your mind when something doesn't go as you would have liked? So reflecting back on the experience, is there anything positive that you could choose that you chose to ignore or block from your memory? Was there anything positive that happened, or even neutral, that you chose to ignore or block from your memory? Write that down. Now I want you to think about something that you're working towards or aspiring for in your life right now. It could be anything. It could be a health goal. It could be a project you're working on. It could be an event you're planning for someone, something you're working towards or aspiring for in your life. And we're going to change your mental Kanban board to influence the outcome. The idea of a mental Kanban board comes from Michelle Navarez. She's the founder of Beyond EI, and she's the author of Beyond EI, a guide to accessing your full potential. Highly recommend her program and her book. So in her book, Michelle explains that our mental Kanban is a metaphor for all of our prior experiences, expectations, and beliefs that our brain draws from to formulate its predictions of what will happen next. We have a choice in what we add to our mental inventory, the emphasis we place upon it when we do, and how frequently we access it and put it to use. So, as you reflect on this project or this goal that you're working on, something you're aspiring for, I want you to write about this. What is the mental Kanban of experiences, expectations, and beliefs that are working to formulate your prediction of how this event will turn out? And I'm going to share a quick example to make this a little bit more concrete for you. I've always struggled with job interviews. As soon as I have to prepare for an interview, my mental Kanban of prior experiences brings up a series of bad interviews from my college years when I was interviewing for jobs I didn't even want. This then leads down a rabbit hole where I start to doubt my skills and qualifications. My mind gets flooded with self-limiting beliefs. And interestingly enough, I ignore the positive interview experiences I've had ever since and the skills that help me to do well in interviews. If I were to prepare for a new job interview, I would need to believe that I am the right person for the job because I hold the right qualifications and I'm the right fit for their culture. To build on this positive self-belief, I would also need to add new evidence to my mental Kanban of experiences that focuses on the positive job interviews and what went well about these and what I brought to the table. So now it's your turn. What do you need to believe about yourself, about the situation or the person that's involved, in order to achieve the outcome that you're hoping for? What do you need to believe about yourself? Here's what others shared in the live webinar. I have enough experience to handle this. I'm strong, confident, and capable. I'm okay if people don't like me. I'm still okay. I'm qualified. I'm capable. I'm here for a reason. I need to believe I am successful and bring strengths to realize the desired outcome. So, what evidence can you add to your mental Kanban of experiences that supports your new belief? What would a close friend or family member share to build upon this evidence? Can you think of a recent experience that you can use and add as evidence in your mental Kanban that supports this belief about yourself? Write about this. And if this feels hard or you're experiencing resistance to this belief, try closing your eyes right now. If you're feeling resistance or if this feels hard, close your eyes right now or have a soft downward gaze. And I want you to imagine that there's a person on your left, a person or a pet that loves you and believes in you. Imagine this person on your left. Now, I also want you to imagine there's a person or a pet on your right side that loves you and believes in you. It could be the same person or a different person. And now I want you to imagine that there's someone behind you, a person or a pet that loves and believes in you. So again, this could be the same person on your left, right, and behind you, or it could be different people. But just imagine the warmth and love that you feel that you're receiving from this person or persons or pets. Allow yourself to receive it. and allow yourself to feel their belief in you. Just notice the sensations in your body as you're receiving their belief in you. And quietly say to yourself what you need to believe about yourself. So next, we're going to talk about hidden values. So we know that our values also shape our lives. This is why we often surround ourselves with like-minded people. What are some ways that your values have shaped your life? For example, your career choice, or where you live, or your social circle, or what you listen to, or what you read. As you reflect on these different areas of your life, what values are standing out to you that have shaped these areas of your life? Maybe you want to jot them down. Are you aware of the ways your hidden values are shaping your life, including your behaviors and your decisions? So what do I mean by hidden values? These are existing values that we're not aware of until we have an experience that creates correlating negative or positive emotions. So, for example, I was working with a client who was describing a frustrating experience with a team member. She felt like her team member had no idea how much work she puts in behind the scenes to make things happen. When I asked her to probe beneath the frustration and explore what needs were not being met by her colleague, she realized that her need for respect and understanding were not being met. And in that moment, she realized that she values mutuality. Because she did not have awareness that mutuality was an important value for her, she wasn't doing things to create mutual respect and understanding between herself and her team members. However, after our conversation, she has decided to create a podcast that brings visibility to her inner life and gives insight into all of the work that she puts into her leadership and her organization. If my client hadn't realized how important her value of mutuality was for her, she would continue to struggle with feeling undervalued and underappreciated, which can lead to resentment and toxic relationships on her team. So, what might be hidden values that are impacting your life right now? Think about something that is bothering you right now or in the recent past. Perhaps it's a personal or professional relationship or a life circumstance that you're in. Just bring this to mind. Now I want you to write, as you look at this chart of unmet needs and feelings, what are the underlying unmet needs that are causing you to feel bothered or frustrated or whatever you're feeling as you think about the situation? So look at the left side to help you identify what you're feeling. And then look at the right side to help you identify what could be some unmet needs that are causing you to feel this way, and write those down. So perhaps an unmet need is your need for growth, or your need for freedom, or your need for acceptance. And I want you to write what values are inherent in those needs. What's important here? So, for example, if your need for acceptance is not being met, perhaps a value for you is being seen, being appreciated. So what's the value that's an important or inherent in this need? And as you identify the values within these needs, notice if you're aware that you have these values or if these are hidden values you didn't know about until this reflective process. Another way to do this exercise is to reflect on a recent positive experience. What needs were being met by the positive experience? And what values were inherent in those needs? And are there any hidden values there that you weren't aware of? An example I could give there is how light I felt after being in a beautiful natural environment. I felt completely transformed from within when I was around trees and mountains and water. And I realized, gosh, I think beauty in the form of nature is really a value for me. And this was a hidden value. And I didn't know that until I really put myself in that sort of environment. So what is one thing you can do to make the value more visible in your life? And it doesn't have to be a podcast like I shared in my example, or it doesn't have to be moving across the country, which is what I did to be closer to beautiful nature. It can be something small, like starting a new hobby or joining a new group where this value comes to life more often, or listening to music, or listening to a podcast that aligns with and encourages this value in you. So what are some ways or one thing you can do to make this value more visible for you in your life? Maybe it's also communicating this value to certain people in your life and allowing them to brainstorm with you. So we've arrived at the final hidden driver, and that's our intention. So similar to values, we can have conscious and unconscious intentions that influence our behaviors and outcomes. So for example, you can imagine in a conversation with someone that your intention might be to connect and get to know them better. But the fear part of you also wants approval or wants to prove a point. Have you ever experienced that where maybe you go to a social gathering and you want to get to know new people or you want to make deeper connections, but then this insecurity and fear takes over and you find yourself also wanting approval and acceptance? So that hidden intention influences how you're able to listen to other people at this gathering, which of course influences your ability to connect. Instead of listening for connection, where we quiet our internal dialogue in order to be fully present to the other person, we're listening to respond. We're listening to our own inner dialogue and thinking about how to respond. So if you examine your day, you may discover unconscious intentions that are fueling your whole experience. Can you bring to mind a recent experience in which you had a conscious intention to influence one outcome, but ended up having a different outcome than what you wanted? For example, maybe this was in a conversation with a family member, a friend, or a colleague, or perhaps you were inspired to do something from a well-intentioned space, but the way you went about it created a different outcome than what you intended. Bring this to mind. What was your conscious intention in this experience? Write about that. Was it to connect? Was it to create awareness? Was it to build consensus around an idea? Was it to have some sort of positive influence in some way? What was your conscious intention? And what was the outcome? Was the outcome what you wanted? And if the outcome wasn't what you wanted, were there some hidden intentions? Like an example I gave, an intention for approval. Or are there any hidden intentions that hijack the outcome that you wanted? In the future, when you're wanting outcomes, it's helpful to reflect in advance on your intention and go deeper to explore any hidden intentions that might come in the way and hijack your desired outcome. How would you manage those unconscious intentions so you get the outcome you're seeking? Thank you so much for your presence and your participation in this webinar. I hope it was a deeply reflective process for you. What's an insight you've gained about yourself? And how does that shape you? What is something you want to change about yourself, or a value that you want to practice with more intention? Thank you again. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.